I really wish somebody would do the social history of the print room as
Mm.
museums or in the academic sphere, because there is something, I think, really unique about it. And we just don't really think about what this allows us to do.
This is Platemark. My name is Ann Shafer, and I am your host. I'm an independent curator specializing in prints and printmaking, and today's interviewee is Hope Saska. She's a curator at the University of Colorado Boulder's Art Museum. Hope and I nerd out on all things cataloging because the CU Art Museum has acquired the archive of Sharks Inc., which is a shop near Boulder in Lyons, Colorado. And so they have taken in mass loads of things, but not just the prints themselves, but the Mylar preparatory things, all of the little cousins of the prints themselves. So we geek out on how you number all that kind of stuff. So if you're a museum nerd like me, you might be interested. Okay, my positionality. I identify as a cis-het white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Any images that Hope and I talk about will be available over on platemarkpodcast.com in the show notes. Also over there is a support and donate button. Click it and you can sign on for a $5 monthly donation or a one-time donation. You can decide on how much money you would like to send over to the Platemark peoples, just me, to support our work and keep the lights on. Okay, I think that's it. Buckle up and here we go. It is wonderful to see you. Welcome to Platemark. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be somewhat face-to-face. My name is Hope Saska, and I have kind of a long title for a small museum. It's Chief Curator and Director of Academic Engagement
At
the CU Art Museum, which is at the University of Colorado in Boulder.
Okay. We ran into each other in New York at the print fair, which is, Shangri-La for all of us. And you were telling me about a project you're working on, which I thought would be a great subject for our episode. But I also love to talk to people about, like how did they ever find print and print history as a thing to study, and why in the world would you go into it?
Yeah. That's a good question, because I think it's such a particular field of study, because it's not just about like a time period in geography, but it's so tied to technology and history of technology and a little bit of history of science. So I think people who sort of find themselves in this field or find their way to this field have a kind of particular mindset, or maybe it's the kind of questions that we ask about visual culture that lead us to prints.
I don't know about your undergrad school, but mine didn't have a history of prints class.
No.
Like we all just sort of backed into it, which I talk about on the podcast all the time. But it's amazing to me that you have to find it on your own.
Mm-hmm. You do. I found it through literature. So that was my gateway experience, was really loving British novels from the 1700s. And so that led me into print culture, finding a home in like the kind of popular imagery of Britain in the late 1700s. And that's where I found it. So you're right. It wasn't really through art history, although I loved art history. It came from like a real fascination with print culture more broadly, and literature and publishing and that avenue.
So did you major not in art history in undergrad?
No, I did. I was an art history major, but I took a lot of English classes. And then in my senior year, we did a project that was based in the college's small collection. And it was a print or works on paper based project, like a little practicum with an exhibition and a curatorial course and a catalog. And I think maybe it's just something about that immediacy of working with works on paper in general, and being able to hold something in your hand and see physical remnants of the histories that these objects had lived. That was really thrilling. So I think those kind of things combined to bring me into the print field.
I was talking to Maureen Warren, our mutual friend, not too long ago, and she remarked about how important it is as an undergraduate to be in a place that has a print room that's set up for this kind of thing. And I mean, there is a collection at my alma mater, but it wasn't like I didn't really pay attention to it in undergrad. But like if you have Steve Goddard at the Spencer and he's,
Right.
teaching you about fake Rembrandts, like
Yeah.
what could be better? So it's
Yeah.
you must have had some better sort of situation than Worcester did.
We really didn't have a robust collection. One of the art history professor that I studied with was Roberta Olson, who is a big collector herself and has just a tremendous love of works on paper. And I think that's kind of what it took. Like the collection wasn't particularly remarkable for like the quality of objects or the diversity of objects. It was just that there was something for us to study, and that's been a really useful touch point for me in this position because our collection is not particularly old, and it's a really interesting collection, but it's not as maybe well resourced as some like really large university collections might be. And so all you need is an interesting object, and it doesn't have to be the most beautiful Dürer print ever, like the most beautiful impression ever made. So it does, yeah, I think that's just you need something to
Where
latch
did
on.
you go to undergrad?
I went to Wheaton College, which is in Norton, Massachusetts. It's a small liberal arts college, kind of tucked away on that little corridor between Boston and Providence,
Right.
in that little area.
Right. So one of the goals, I'm sure, of the collection there is to be
Mm.
made available to faculty and students at
Yes.
CU. And are
Mhm.
you in charge of that aspect?
Yes, I am, yeah. It's like every a little bit of everything.
Right.
I work with classes. I'm you know, the ti I about a year ago, I took on the title of Director of Academic Engagement, and that is always kind of funny to me because we have no education department, and it's really like maybe 2 or 3 people who sometimes do the role, but nobody's doing it full time, and so I've kind of stepped in and have been really trying to find creative ways to connect faculty and students to our collection. And because we've really shaped it to be so heavily print based, it really has been focused in that direction. We're able to bring works of art out into the study center and have people, have that immediate connection with the objects, which is really, usually pretty rewarding.
Well, it just changes your whole relationship with the object than, walking into the quiet gallery where someone's shushing you,
Right. Well, and
right?
I always reflect that I think, that's how people have traditionally looked at prints. When collectors or other, institutions, this whole framing everything or encasing everything and is just such a new construct for collection use that people did have all of their papers spread out on a table and you could move things around and compare and contrast. And I think there's something really conversational about the print room as a space that's not true of the gallery too. So I think all of these things foster, and I really wish somebody would do the social history of the print room as a
Mm.
museums or an academic sphere because there is something I think really unique about it, and we just don't really think about what this allows us to do. I think probably most people got to be print curators because we love just being in that space too, and that like social realm of the print room.
Well, and also I think, and I've talked about this before, that we all have a shared vocabulary of images, right?
Mhm.
Like, I can say, oh, we've got the Vaporetto, blah blah, whatever Whistler, and you're like, oh yeah, we've got one of those, and we know what we're talking about, each of us.
Yeah, it does. So that has been this common vocabulary or the shared vocabulary or shared references. I think what I've been reflecting on recently is how that's also made us more of an ivory tower field too, and, really thinking about, like, the student we don't have a lot of Whistler prints in this collection, for example, and so, what happens to the field if those reference points are like, if we're always replicating ourselves because we have the same reference points, and how can we bring students in and or create collections with diversity of reference points so that we're not creating and, like, rehashing these sort of academic lineages that we all came out of, but like I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
It's
So
hard.
I'm not quite sure what to do, but I do think about that a lot.
Well, yeah, no, I think about it too. Like I hadn't heard it put in the way that you've just put it, but you're absolutely right. We're self-perpetuating this sort of tower of people. But at the same time, when they break up the departments and give the American painting curator the American prints, like there's so much minutia, and as you said at the top, it takes a certain kind of brain
Mhm.
to embrace this kind of minutia
Yeah,
that the prints will get lost
right.
in that other collection. So that it's this real delicate balance. It's weird.
Yeah, 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 that's really interesting to think about how within a museum, how that these sort of collections function as because I think prints are one of the few collections, and maybe other like some decorative objects or other sculpture collections, but nobody has, or very few collections have so much breadth geographically and time-wise in
And
time.
just sheer numbers.
Yeah, and numbers too. So there is something to be said for, having that shared experience and catalog, but it's just so interesting. I don't know what to do with it. I'm just even thinking about like, the job interviews when I was on the market looking for jobs specifically in print rooms, and this job at the university is really expansive, but some of the connoisseurship tests that we are required when you're looking for a job and identifying, I mean, that's so useful, but it's also again gets to like this replication issue
Pretty
that
arcane. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, you can see why people break the departments up, but at the same time, I'm like, that's insane. It's just insane to throw a painting curator into that morass,
yeah,
honestly. They're
yeah,
used to handling like 300 works.
right, and
Right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it's a huge visual catalog that we walk around with in our heads.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Other people, I don't know if anyone else has said that, but when I am talking to a young artist and they're showing me their work or whatever, I'm like flip, 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 flip.
Mhm.
Pictures are going fast and furious through my brain. I'm like, you sit right in this corner over here with Ann Hamilton or whoever.
Yeah, yeah, a way of looking, or like actors who can recite lines from, a number of Shakespeare plays, or it's just yeah, it's a way of having information.
And it's all, it's everybody has a different kind of brain. Like
Mm.
I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, all right, let's get to. Well, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut in the
What?
northwest corner. Yes, I know you're from the shore, is that
I
right?
am, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You wrote your dissertation on something British and literary.
Well, I wrote my dissertation on kind of looking at this question. Oh my gosh, can I remember the title? It was called Staging the Page: The Theatricality of British Prints, something like that. I might not I clearly it's been a while since I looked at it. But I was interested in the way theater and print culture came together to create character and legibility of character and even language and staging techniques to kind of create in caricatures in particular. And I used the relationship between William Hogarth and Henry Fielding as a starting point, and then looked at or thought about how it might go forward in time from everything from the way character was developed to the way audience was thought about for prints, like how did people think about their viewers when they were making these things, which is
Right, right.
really hard to kind of get at, so
Maureen Warren also revealed to me that I don't know how much you talked to her about her love of the Dutch, Republic sort of stuff,
Mhm.
but she proved to me pretty well that Romain de Hooghe is responsible for the modern caricature and political satire print on which all of the things you were working on are based.
Yeah.
And she claims that he is as important as the man, Rembrandt.
Oh, wow, that's
I
great.
know. Yeah,
That's
somebody's got to do a good deep dive on Romain de Hooghe. She
yes.
also had to teach me how to pronounce that.
I
It
was gonna say first you have to pronounce it, and then
was very useful.
Maureen can get to that.
I know. Okay, so the project you're currently working on, about which we decided to make this episode has to do with a shop that's not too far from you.
Yes. Sharks Inc., which is in Colorado, just up the road in Lyons. So not quite sure how many miles, but it's about a 35-minute car ride from where I am right now in Boulder to the lithography workshop of Bud Shark, which is Sharks Inc. So they're our neighbors, and they also have the distinction of having a real national presence as well, and international too. So most people in the print world know of Sharks Inc. and their lithographs, but also they do things on woodblock as well. So
And nobody would ever believe that his name is really Bud Shark, but it
I
is.
know, I know it's a perfect name,
It is
and
perfect. All right. So, see, you somehow managed to get it all together and to acquire the archive. And were you instrumental in that?
I started when they were really kicking things off. So that was our director worked with the advancement team on campus to lead that charge. But I came in more on the side when we were, bringing the collection into the museum, thinking about how we might store it, catalog it. I worked with our registration and collections and department on thinking through some of those things. But to bring it in, there was a huge, fundraising campaign, and they had a lot of interested donors, and then of course had to make an argument to the university for why this should be, something that the university would acquire, and fortunately the university was extremely supportive of.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I have to get nerdy on the cataloging question because you and I have both, I can tell, delved into the numbering problems of groups of things.
Mhm.
So you in the collection there are impressions of every project, every edition,
Mhm.
plus a lot of other
Mhm.
stuff.
Plus a lot of other stuff. And so the other stuff can range everything from stencils and cutouts to drawings to mylar sheets. It really varies. There's the kind of physical material that is in this collection, and not every print comes with the same set of kind of what we call the related accessories. So our numbering system that we settled on through working with my colleague Maggie Mazzullo and another colleague Britt Sholnick, who's since moved on, but that team in the registration department was to think about, like, well, how do we find these? Not only how do we number them, but how do we find them? Not every class or visit is going to want to see everything related to one particular print. So how do we separate it? And we landed on giving everything a unique, well, everything does have a unique number, but this collection, things that are related to the Sharks Inc. acquisition, which is called the Sharkive, which is another
Cute.
kind of funny. They all have S numbers. So the first digit is the letter S, and then the year, and then the number of the print. But then for other related accessories, there's an RA attached to it. So it might
Okay.
be S2019.231 is like the print, the finished print, the edition print. But then if it's a Mylar, it would be like S2019.321 point something something RA.
Oh, oh,
It's
interesting.
really, it's really complicated.
Well, I know I was trying to think about how would you do like you wouldn't want to give them A, B's, and C's because they're not really children; they're
Right.
cousins.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't wanna confuse it either. You don't There's proofs as well, and so,
Oh, right.
something might be like the accepted edition to print, but then there might be a proof with a color variation, and it looks really good, but you don't want it to be confused with the finished print.
Oh man, those
Yeah.
were the days. Hope.
I know.
I love
I
those kind
know.
of puzzles.
The knockdown, drag out philosophical fights that you can have over these things are, just really mind-boggling,
I
but,
think, yeah, I
or
think
just
listeners would be astonished.
yeah, just the testing things out to see, like, what happens if, you have to, like, come at this from so many different, angles. It's just ridiculous, so.
Right. So you're now working toward a larger project, which I assume is going to be an exhibition and maybe slash book.
So we have an exhibition up, which is great. So we opened an exhibition this fall that features a range of the prints, and then we wanted to make sure that we could also show the archive, what they consider sort of the archival material, so the related materials, as well as, in addition to related materials, we also got the shop archives, so files with correspondence, some of that kind of exchange of information too.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it's really, really expansive, and it's really challenging to think about, when you have thousands and thousands of things, how do you present it in an exhibition in a way that translates and makes sense?
But so if you're getting, I'm back to the nerdy numbering. If if you have a full file folder full of like the printer's notes on the mixing of the ink or the sequence of the steps or whatever it is, do those go into the object file for the specific project, or do they get they get their own number as an art object?
They don't. They are kept as an archive. So
Okay.
they're filed separately. So we have them like right now they're just in bankers boxes. They're not as fully cataloged as the prints or some of the production materials or related materials.
Fascinating. Oh my gosh. So do you know what the total number of pieces of paper slash mylar slash whatever you got in this group?
It grows. I can't give you, it's in the thousands. And I think it's, I could give you a number later, but I think because it's always growing too. So as soon as the sharks make something new, we schedule a pickup and we add to the collection.
Oh, okay. So part of the deal was that you would get the related things on the edition print from everything moving forward.
Correct. Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yes. And they're still, they're still making objects, and, we saw them at print fair with their walls full. So they're still very active.
When I was at the National Gallery, they had recently taken in a Gemini archive and also a graphic studio archive, which I think at that point was supposed to be one of everything. It would wait until there was this big buildup and 200 things would come in, and you'd sit there all summer like tapping away. So it wasn't like let's drive 30 minutes down the street and pick up
Um,
something from Bud and Barbara.
yeah. Yeah. Bud is the printer. And so he has one assistant who prints with him, and then another assistant who helps manage the shop. And there's Barbara, who is also really involved with their day-to-day. So that they're, not a shop of 20 people coming and going. They're a pretty hands-on small operation compared
Right.
to some other, print shops.
So the show's up, and I assume you wrote every last piece of anything that's on the wall about it. It's your show. Is
Yes.
it traveling?
Not in its current state, but that's something that we're considering, thinking about what it might look like if it traveled, and, would there be some changes? Because we do have our prints, but then we have related materials, so we would have to investigate that. But I would like it to, and I'd really love to work on a catalog at some point if I could carve out time away. I mean, that's always the challenge, is finding that really focused time to write grants and then write the thing itself and figure out what you want in it. But my my dream would be to really give some attention and produce a catalog that kind of contextualizes the Sharkive as like an entire group of objects.
Yeah, that seems like if you were the National Gallery or the Met, it would have been a no-brainer, and you would have produced such a thing.
Yes, yeah, but I think with my 5 titles, or well, really it's 2, but, it's I think that's where, like, these, being in a smaller institution, it's harder to just carve out time for things like that. So,
Yeah, I wonder if listeners have ever thought about, and of course, that maybe they don't give a what, but like the differences in scale and size and even collection numbers can completely affect what you're able to accomplish at a certain place. And in a lot
yeah.
of ways, being at a smaller place, you have more freedom in some ways,
Mhm.
and maybe your turnaround to get things on the wall is possibly shorter.
Yeah.
But then you don't have the resources to produce these big fat catalogs. It's a real it's so varying,
It
the field.
is. Yeah, it is. It's so varying. And I think when you come out of grad school and you've had that experience of being an academic researcher, or you're coming out of thinking about walking into the profession, if you do find yourself in a smaller institution, it's really exciting to take on a lot of different roles. But, for me, there's always that part of me that really misses large scale research projects or just getting lost in a research project for weeks on end. And I have these sort of ongoing projects that I'm working on, but they always take a lot longer because, or, these questions that pop up that would be really meaty to dive into. But, I have to like do payroll for our student staff and or run down and teach a class. It can really vary.
You teach in the art history department. Does the university offer a museum studies kind of certificate, or is it straight ahead art history?
So I am not on any faculty here. What I do is every other fall as an instructor, so in an adjunct capacity, because I don't have teaching as part of my job description in terms of like, constructing a separate course. I teach through the Museum and Field Studies department, and I have kind of a dual stream of master students in art history and master students in museum and field studies. We look at an aspect of the collection and do a curatorial project that then gets mounted. So that students who are maybe interested in museum work can walk away with the experience of having produced an exhibition, written a label, maybe done some programming. Not really a side hustle, but it kind of is a side hustle. And the teaching that I do on a day-to-day basis is in our study center with classes that want to come in and look at the collection.
Is there a part of the collection that's not print related that you have a little special heart love for that people would be surprised about? Like Maureen is really into Chinese ceramics, and she is a sucker for a blue and white.
Oh, yeah. We have so many little areas. I wish I could spend more time with some of our paintings because we're out here in Colorado and we have a collection of paintings that are related to Colorado landscapes. And I always wish I had a little more time, particularly the early 20th century ones where people are starting to think about the history of mining and mining in the landscape and some of these like ecological issues that come up hand in hand with landscape development, but also tourism. And so I'd really like to spend more time with them. And when I grew up in my art history classes, I hated landscape painting. It was so boring and oppressive and tedious because it was just like these, giant canvases that just demanded so much attention. And now I really love them. So luckily I've grown out of that, but it was always something I was, like the least interested in.
I think a lot about how the bar I set for prints that I not want to collect for myself necessarily, but really like or strike me. The bar was really high when I was collecting for the museum, and they had to be, they had to have meaning, they had to have conceptual rigor. They couldn't be pretty landscapes necessarily. And how much that's changed for me since I've left the museum. Like, the whole world has opened up. I'm like, oh, look, decorative. I love it.
So what have you developed a soft spot for?
I have really been thinking about the stupidity and idiocy of the idea of craft as bad. Like, I'm not doing crafts myself, but I just watch friends online, and they're like dyeing with real indigo. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I do love, Maureen kind of convinced me on the ceramics thing. And I do love contemporary Japanese ceramics and sort of these modernist, forms and stuff. So I would say probably there. That's sort of the intersection of decorative, useful objects and, beautiful art. Like, and those nomenclatures all are problematic.
Yeah. It's another thing that you can get your hands on though, which is maybe like how they connect, that you have like an immediate personal relationship with an object.
Yeah, no, you're right. I hadn't
That
thought
they
of it that way.
share.
Yeah, I can have one and you can too.
Yeah. And there's like a sculptural element. I mean, like a lot of people think about printmaking as sort of a sculptural activity. So there might be like a lot of through lines to connect.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Do you have something on the books that's coming up that you're excited about working on?
I'm actually really excited about our collection plan. About a year ago, we have our first collection plan. We didn't have one before as a museum. And so I was able to spend, I think, really the time during COVID to think about the history of the collection, directions for the collection to grow in. And it is, just I think because of our scale, our facilities, and then our budget as well, it will grow into a kind of more focused print collection, I think. So I'm really excited about thinking about the collection and developing it, which is not like an exhibition project, but it's a way of taking the roadmap and thinking about what could it become and how can it grow and, what might we want to collect. And I'm really trying to think about ways to bring students into that process more and really thinking about these questions of transparency and access, not only like that we're all thinking about right now, but how can the collection grow in a way that demonstrates that commitment? So I think that's what I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, I always feel like I should, whenever I talk to a person who's in a smaller place, well, even in a bigger place, that if there are people out there thinking about giving a lump sum of money to somebody, giving a print curator a fund that only they can touch
Yeah,
would be Shangri-La. And think
exactly.
about how much you can do with so little money, really, in the greater scheme of things.
I know, that's always been something that I've been that's my battle cry, I think, is like you can get really great material and it doesn't have to break the bank, but also it just increases in value over the years too. Or you have this opportunity to collect the work of one artist at multiple points in the career, and that's accessible too, which is really wonderful to look at different stages of an artist's career across a collection and have it be accessible and have it also something you can bring out in exhibitions and in teaching and really, talk about that development. And that's one of the things I really like about having the Sharksing collection here at the museum is that we can talk about so often we're used to seeing like the ta-da moment when the finished product is on the wall and it has a beautiful frame and it's lit and it looks great. But when you're working with students who are trying to struggle through the process, that is not always as meaningful as saying, let me show you how they came to this beautiful ta-da moment. And let's talk about the discussions or changes or alterations that were made. And I know you've done a lot with students too, and have probably had those conversations between yeah, the finished thing is really beautiful, but like the process is probably what interests print curators and that's my interest. And so how do you reveal that to somebody coming in? And so I think that's why I like having this archive because we can take slivers of the process and of that decision making or the negotiation between the artist and the printmaker. Like this notion of genius is just so old fashioned now and the way that so instead of talking about one great person with all these great ideas, we're talking about communities of work of labor that come together to come to the end of production. So it's rewarding to talk about that and to be able to demonstrate that.
I think you're absolutely right. I feel like it's really easy to come to a work of art from a visitor to a institution's point of view and to, I mean, know that somebody made it, but not really understand all the things that, all those decisions you're talking about, like
Mm.
everything back down to the idea that is born inside the person's head. Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to separate those things, you know, like way too wide. And I
Yeah.
always have to remind myself, like somebody, sat down and was like, I'm gonna, paint that landscape with the mining thing, and maybe someone will pick up that I'm talking about X.
Mhm.
I think it's useful, and printmaking is the perfect way to do that because these shops keep all this stuff and you can show it in the stages and the states and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
and you can show experimenting with different types of paper or which has a lot of meaning, but that's another, like, study and industry one can study is, like, the history of paper making, and, oh my god, that's really fascinating. Print people get to do that a little bit. We get to think about, like, indulge that line of curiosity. You just realize how many, like, different types of expertise come together to make a print, and it's not one genius who's sitting there doing everything independently, which
Well, and
is
and there are painters who paint alone, but I mean,
yeah,
everybody's got people around them at some
right.
point, so you're not really alone in a tower.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the idea of genius is it's had its due, and
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I think that's why I think the painting people are hanging on pretty tightly to the idea of the artistic genius, and it's their objects that have created the canon, quote unquote, and the print people are just like the scrappy underdogs, and we've got it all going on, like, it's like I'm Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. What's the best part about living in Colorado?
Oh, well, right now I'm looking out at a sunset over the Front Range, so it's really pretty. Yeah, we get to live in just a beautiful place.
Wait, hasn't it snowed already though?
Yes, yep. We had a little snowstorm last night, 4 or 5 inches. I haven't been outside since I got here this morning, but
4 or 5 inches would stop Baltimore in its tracks.
I know. Yeah, it's really funny, as an East Coaster, and I was just there visiting family, like that kind of gray cold that gets through all the fibers in your hat and mittens and just chills you. That we don't have that here. It's like
R-
it's cold, but it's sunny and might be snowy, but then like the sun comes out and the sky is blue. So yeah, Colorado is a really beautiful place. I think that's, Steve Goddard is just up the road in Estes Park. So
He's on my list, a get list, because I've had multiple people bring him up in conversation as I'm doing these interviews with people. And for people that don't know, Steve was the curator at the Spencer Museum at the University of Kansas in Lawrence for a long time, and the print room is now named for him. And Kate Meyer, his successor, is trying to live up to I mean, he's a hard act to follow.
Mhm.
She's wonderful. He's a
Yeah.
hard act to follow. And I'd love to get him to talk, although somebody told me
Mhm.
he sort of is like, yeah, I'm done.
Oh, okay. It would be nice to get him to talk.
I know.
I would always love to pick his brain and talk about, like, his process of developing a collection or how he thought about building the collection that he did, because I feel like it would really benefit from learning from him
Right.
those things. So, but yeah, he's
Yeah.
taking photographs of Estes Park and
Yeah.
wildlife, all of
Yeah.
that.
All right. Well, Hope, it's been great talking to you. If people want to follow you or be in touch, what's the best way to do that?
I think the best way is to find me on our website at the CU Art Museum. And all my contact information is there, and would love to chat. I'd meet other print evangelists out there.
And
So,
there's many.
and I know. It's
But
great.
but I'm glad we got to talk about the Sharkive, because I don't know that people know that that has all come to pass and that CU is a great
Yes.
resource.
Yes, yep, we acquired it in 2018 and, have been bringing it into our collection ever since. In our public-facing role, we really invite researchers, scholars, people to come and make use of it, and a lot of it is online too, and people can find that through the collections link on our web collections page website too. We have a lot of the thanks to actually Bud and Barbara's work, because they took such great photographs, and their assistant Roseanne Kalachis made wonderful records for us as well. So when they handed off the Sharkive, they also handed off a great resource, in terms of like a digital kind of catalog ready to go for it. So,
That's
um,
amazing, because that's time and money and time.
yes, and time. Yeah. And foresight too, because you have to be able to break it down. And I mean, their printmakers are usually pretty organized, so I think it worked for them too. But yeah, so we can find anything that's in that collection and make it
All
available.
right. That's awesome.
And
Thank you. All
yeah,
right.
thank
It
you.
was great talking to you. We will, next time you have a big project coming up, we'll do it again and see
Mhm.
what's going on with you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for inviting me on, Anne. It's been just a
Oh,
joy.
good. Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Platemark with Hope Saska. I hope you enjoyed it. She's a delight, and I thank her for being on the show. I always need to send a thank you to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music, and a reminder that any images we talk about are over at platemarkpodcast.com, as well as a support and donate button, so you can decide how you'd like to support Platemark. I appreciate everyone who has done so far. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we will see you next time.